David Tepper riding around in the back of an SUV, not a limo, although he could afford the largest, swankiest limo in the world and then some, talking about how the league is set up for everyone to be 8-8, and how you go north or south of that depends upon the quality of your coach, your GM. Oh, and you better have a pretty good quarterback. Well, he's got the coach he wants. He's got the GM he wants. Now he wants the quarterback. They tried to get Matthew Stafford. That deal didn't go through. Now they've pivoted to Deshaun Watson. And it's funny, Chris, you missed this last week. I don't know how much you noticed of it. There was another network that shall remain nameless but has 4 letters in its call sign that started off with its various writers that cover the various teams making bold predictions. Somehow the bold prediction for the Panthers morphed into a report that provided fuel for the whole week of content about the possibility of the Panthers sending 3 first-round picks and Christian McCaffrey to the Texans for Deshaun Watson. By the end of the week, the actual report, not bold prediction, was that the Panthers spent much of the week clearing cap space so they could make a run at Deshaun Watson. And I'm convinced if they don't get Deshaun Watson, they're going to pivot to someone else.
Yes.
That David Tepper is obsessed with getting a guy who falls into that category of franchise quarterback. And it's not just Deshaun Watson. It could have been Matthew Stafford. It could be Russell Wilson if they decide to make a run at him. It could be Trevor Lawrence if all else fails and they make the Jaguars an offer they can't refuse. But Tepper has decided the time is now to get himself a quarterback that he can call a franchise quarterback, and that's becoming more and more obvious every day.
No, without question. There's too many signs really with the way Matt Rule talked about the quarterback position, Teddy Bridgewater towards the end of the year, some of the, hey, the season's over and now we're going to evaluate some of that. Rule has made some comments to make you think, hey, they're not pleased with the way their quarterback played last year, certainly. And we both got a lot of respect for Teddy Bridgewater, what he had to deal with and everything like that. But, I mean, the facts of the matter is Teddy Bridgewater, at least in my opinion, is a borderline starting NFL quarterback. He is not the guy that, okay, it's a new a young team, we're kind of finding our way, and he's not going to carry you and, get you over the hump and win a few extra games. In fact, last year, I would argue that it was the opposite. He probably lost them a few games. Now, we saw the year before that with the New Orleans Saints. When you're on the perfect team, yes, he can win. But this is not the perfect team right now. And with the weapons they have, that's the other thing. And that's where I think it's very intriguing with Deshaun Watson, with the receivers, of course, McCaffrey, everything they have there. They have the potential to be a very, very explosive offense. And if I'm Deshaun Watson, I'm looking at Carolina seriously because I think it's not far down the road to where you look at their roster and go, hey, they can turn things around. There's a lot of pieces that are in place, and they could be a major player this year if they got a guy like Deshaun Watson on their football team at quarterback.
The challenge for any of the teams that pursue Deshaun Watson becomes how much of that roster do you have to give up to get Deshaun Watson? Is it draft picks? Is it players? Is it Christian McCaffrey? Is it Robbie Anderson? Peter King has a bunch of different proposed trade scenarios in Football Morning in America, and one of the trades he proposes is both McCaffrey and Anderson and picks for Deshaun Watson, which could put Deshaun Watson in a situation similar to the one that he's in with the Houston Texans, where there's not enough help around him to be as good as he can be. That's part of the challenge. And by the way, as Peter points out, so far the Texans have received offers. They have just not responded to any of them. So we don't know whether or not Texans are going to realize it's in their best interest to get the most they can for Deshaun Watson by the draft at the latest. Otherwise, who knows how this is all going to play out. But we're assuming that there will be an opening at some point as we have these conversations. And, Chris, I want to go back to last year when they hired Matt Rule. David Tepper owned the team for a year and a half by then. Why didn't they aim higher at quarterback then? Why did they give so much guaranteed money to Teddy Bridgewater? Did they think they were getting a franchise quarterback? And by the way, when you consider McCaffrey for most of the year, he wasn't a disaster.
No, I know he was not a disaster. You're right about that. No, but I still think in this league where, David Tepper makes that great point, it is an 8-8 league, and it is set up for everybody to be on the same playing field. And when your team is not quite perfect or anything like that, that's when the big-time quarterbacks come into play. Hey, yes, it's a lot easier to manage and be a quarterback of a great football team, a la like the New Orleans Saints the year before with Teddy Bridgewater when he went 5-0. But it's a different thing when, okay, we're young, We're kind of finding our way. Our offensive line's patchy. Now we need a guy that can make a few plays every game where, hey, the game's in the balance, but we don't have anybody to kind of push us over the edge, or, hey, get on my shoulders and I'll carry us through this moment in a big moment, or we're, going back and forth in a shootout like that. And I think that's where ultimately, it came down on Teddy Bridgewater. There was just too many moments like that where it went the other way. It went the wrong way. It was like, okay, Teddy, we need you to make some plays here and do something. Oh, he threw an interception. Oh, he fumbled. It was too many of those moments, I think, through the year. And Mike, you know me with quarterback. It's not always about the stats and the bottom line. It's what's there to be had. And I think there's too many times when I watched film of Carolina this year where I went, yeah, he played well, but there was 5 or 6 plays that were there to be had that could have, changed the way that game went, or Carolina could have won the football game. And there was just never enough, capitalizing on those moments. And that's where I think the big time quarterbacks come through. And I think Deshaun Watson, and I want to get back to a little bit of Peter King with the wide receiver thing and all that. No, trade draft picks, Carolina Panthers, trade picks, but don't trade Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore or any of those guys. That's part of why you want Deshaun Watson there. He can take full advantage of all they have to offer. And I think that's where Teddy Bridgewater just is a little short in that department. He's not going to make some of those big explosive throws to guys like Anderson and DJ Moore, who are more of the, some of the most explosive receivers in our game right now.
And this constant chatter about McCaffrey. I mean, he's got to be wondering, what the hell did I do to deserve this?
Right.
Like, why am I getting thrown into this? Again, it started as a bold prediction. It morphed into something more than that because last week was not an active week by any means. It was a challenge to fill 3 hours a day, 2 in the morning and 1 at night, but there still was enough. But McCaffrey's got to be thinking, why me? And the other reality, I just did the math here. If they trade McCaffrey, they're taking a $17.2 million cap charge for trading him because they gave him a $21.5 million signing bonus when they signed him last year. And I can't help but wonder whether or not they're at least contemplating doing that, because I think McCaffrey was paid in part because he was the new face of the franchise post Cam Newton. And if you get Deshaun Watson, he becomes the face of the franchise. And also, they saw last year when McCaffrey was injured, the team didn't fall apart.
No, it did not.
And it pains me to say it because we're big Christian McCaffrey fans. But I could see why they would at least consider the possibility of dangling McCaffrey, taking the $17.2 million cap hit. Next year, Deshaun Watson's salary is south of $11 million, so you're looking at $27 million in total cap dollars for those two guys. That's doable even with the cap going down this year. But I'm fascinated by McCaffrey getting roped into this. First is speculation. Now Peter's got him as part of his trade proposal, and you have to wonder if the Texans do this. Will they even want to pay a running back that kind of money?
That's
Nick
a good
Caserio
question.
Comes from New England, where what is it? It's
they
4 or 5 different guys.
Right.
You never know who's on the field getting the football at any given time.
No, to me that is the big point there too. Yes, does the other team or the Texans, do they want to bring that on? And this year is a perfect example too. Of course, like you said, you pay McCaffrey all that money. Running back is violent. We know that. It's the most violent position of all sports. And it's 2 or 3 hits, and all of a sudden, hey, this guy's not here for 9-10 weeks, and we're paying him all this money. Now, where I find it interesting too, Mike, is just the Carolina Panthers offense. Joe Brady, right? He came from that Sean Payton coaching tree and all that. We know how much they value the back in the passing game. I see that certainly, but I also think with a guy like Matt Rule and I think he has a very good eye for talent. I really do. Being in college football all those years, he's seen NFL, he's been back to college doing all that, building teams. He probably feels like, hey, I can find myself a running back that a la New England or other places where I can get, maybe 2 guys for way less than the price it costs for Christian McCaffrey, and we can still make this offense work with Joe Brady. So that's where it will be interesting, and I don't know where it goes, but this is not the last thing. The other thing I wanted to say, just from everything I know, talking to people last week, all of that. I mean, the Texans are not even taking calls right now. The sense I get from people around the league is that there's nothing to talk about. The Texans aren't, like Nick Caserio has, I guess, basically said, hey, no, and there's nothing going on. We're keeping Deshaun Watson. He's certainly done a good job of selling those, goods to everybody. But we know the reality of the situation is Watson doesn't want to be there. But I think there's a lot of teams that are just kind of sitting out there going, yeah, we'd love Deshaun Watson, but there's no dialogue right now. There's nothing going on. The Texans haven't moved that far, and that's where we're at a stalemate, at least in this process.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.